"Would you like to come out today?" "Oh, yes, please," said Edward. So they lit his fire, made lots of steam, and Edward puffed away.
Hello everybody, welcome to the 10th episode of Ed's Headcannon Facts. I can't believe we made it to 10 episodes. And to think I wasn't even originally going to make this a series. To celebrate this occasion, I'll be answering 10 questions presented to me by you guys. Let's get started. The Breaking Bad Thomas fan asks, what happened to George after he and the workmen went away? I'm going to assume you mean when he left after the events of Steamroller. After the workmen finished widening the road, George was then sent to help construct Boulder Quarry. After this, Percy took him to Maithwaite to take down an old siding and turn it into a road. Unfortunately for Thomas, he didn't do a very good job. Around this time is when Sir Topham Hatt needed the lift to his wife's birthday party. George was happy to prove his superiority, but this ended up backfiring. After this, he was taken to Wellsworth to be repaired. He was still annoyed after yesterday, so
The freight car wouldn't move until Gordon forced it.
Yeah. Lady Chandra of the Moon asks, would any of the AEG cast be on the island? Yes, but not in the way you might think. There's of course Sandy, a 1988 Toyota Hilux Hi-Rail, and Bruno, a caboose brought over from the States, but the all-who's-go characterizations of the main cast are here as well. These are as original characters. Dylan is the Thomas of the group, a diesel shunter built in the late 90s who works at Tidmouth. Martha is the Kana of the group, and is an NWR design built in 2000. She runs the Loop Line local service. Malik is the diesel equivalent, and he works freight trains around the Loop area. He was built by the NWR in the early 2000s. Avery and Brooke are ones I've talked about in previous installments, so I'll just say that Avery is the Percy equivalent, and Brooke is the Nia equivalent. My reasoning for making the all-in-just-go interpretations of these characters their own characters is because I like to see them as the sort of next generation of the Northwestern Railway's fleet. The Industrial Engine asks, have there been any ROD-280s or locos that served in the war in general on Sodor? Yes, several in fact. The Northwestern loaned many engines during World War II to help with the workload, but I'll talk about most of them some other time. I will say though that one of these engines was the USATC S-160 called Sam. He stayed on the railway from 1943 till the end of the war, after which he was bought from the War Department by a private company, located somewhere on the Peel-Godred line. The company needed something powerful to shunt their private yard and take trains, due to a sharp incline out of the facilities. Sam might be overkill, but he does work well enough, and even today his company has no plans of selling him. Keegan asks, where does Neville work, and what's his backstory? Like I said, there have been several war engines on the island, and Neville is one of them. He used to work on the southern coast, where he often took munitions and equipment trains. Unfortunately, he took an almost direct hit from a bomb close to the end of the war. This killed one of his closest friends and left him distraught, anxious, and miserable. He is, needless to say, a product of war. His life was a constant battle after the war, as it seemed like nobody quite understood just what he went through. Thankfully, though, Sir Topham Hatt purchased him in 1964. This was a turning point in Neville's misfortune. Slowly, through the help of his new friends, such as Smudger, a fellow vet, he has learned to cope with what happened, and is now in a much better shape. He's a lot more cheerful now, but still just as brave as he was in the war, saving an engine from certain doom during a fire at the oil field. He's had quite the journey, and he's proud of how far he's come. He works on the Peel-Godred. Mr. Toaster and Clay asks, do Ginty and Pug live on Sodor, and who works for Scruff? I know this is technically 2 questions, but the answers are short, so I'll do them in one. Ginty and Pug don't live on Sodor, but are thankfully on a heritage railway. They often write to Percy, and occasionally visit for galas. Scruff originally worked for Croc's scrapyard, but when work dried up, he was sold to the NWR. He now performs maintenance on the west side of the island, meaning he primarily works with Theodore, 13, Harvey, and Sandy. Though, being a maintenance engine, you could say he works with everyone. Coldy and Goddard asks, how many foreign, as in non-British/Irish, engines work on the NWR? There's not really a lot of them, given it's a lot easier to purchase engines from the UK than have them shipped overseas, but there are some foreigners. These are, of course, Hank, Philip, and Porter. Sir Robert Norby's collection is where most of the international engines can be found. These aren't technically Fat Controller's railway engines, but I'll include them anyway. Millie, the Earl's first engine, is of course from France. Adriano is an Italian engine he bought to pull supply trains for his various projects. Milada is another foreign engine from Czechoslovakia, and was bought by the Earl on his travels. She does rail tours in the summer along Thomas's branch line. Hero also exists, but that's a story for another day. Tank Engine Media asks, do Gordon and the other engines have favorite animals? Yes, Gordon's favorite animal, though we'd never say he has one, is the horse, as many of his brothers and sisters were named after them. Percy also shares this favorite animal. He knows all about the racehorses that he takes to the horse jumping field on Thomas's branch line. Toby and Mavis are both dog people, as they see a lot of them walking the streets on the tramway. Daisy's a big cat person. If she was human, she'd totally be a cat lady. Edward's favorite animal is the eel. There's a reason behind it, but it's a long story. One last thing I think worth noting is that Henry, Murdoch, and Molly are all keen bird watchers. Akintola Shikoni, I butchered that, didn't I, asks, how many modern engines are on Sodor? Not really any, apart from the NWR built engines. The hats usually go after engines that need new homes anyway. Currently, the youngest non-Northwestern built engine is Avery, who's ironically younger than all of the diesels. There is, though, a consistent visitor to the island who's much younger. Mikey, the Class 325-1, is the engine that takes the mail onto the mainland. He's an engine of few words, but he gets on well with the others. Unlike his classmates, as an experiment, he was converted to diesel. The experiment proved to be nothing of note, but he hasn't been converted back. The Fat Controller has offered several times to buy him, but Mikey is content with his current owners. Combs asks, what engines were on the TK&E, Wellsworth and Sudbury, and S&M? The Sodor Mainland's roster is the most simple. Number 1 is Clive, number 2 is Neil, and number 3 is Matthew, all of whom are box tanks. There was a 4th engine, another Nielsen, but that's for another time. The Wellsworth and Sudbury's is a bit more complex. Number 1 is Old Victor, who really is old, built in 1862. He was bought by the Wellsworth and Sudbury and rebuilt into a tank engine. Billy and Charlie are numbers 2 and 3, and are both Manning Wardle Q classes built for the line. Helena is number 4, and is a Sharp Stewart 060T rebuilt into a tender engine. Whiff is an LY&R 111, bought later on to take locals between Wellsworth and Tidmouth. The Tidmouth, Knapford, and Ellsbridge roster is the most complex. The original number 1 was made out of a stationary boiler by A.W. Dry. She ran the line for a few years and eventually yanked out from number 2, built out of a steam donkey. Number 3, Tabitha, was the first true coffee pot, built to handle the increasingly heavier workload. Number 4, Flora, and the second number 1, Glynn, were built when the line was extended to Farquhar. Number 5, or Lucy, was built to handle the longer trains to Ulfstead. And last, but certainly not least, Joss the A1X asks, is Luke Canon, does he work on the SKR? Luke is indeed Canon. He's a different basis though, one that's actually Irish. He used to work on the SKR as an MOD engine. When the MOD left, he decidedly stayed in the quarry, fearful of what his punishment would be if people learned what he'd done. Thankfully, he was eventually rediscovered by Sir Lowy, who brought him in secret to the recently opened Glee Lowy quarry. It's a convoluted tale, but eventually he was donated to the Ulfstead Heritage Railway, where he now happily works. He often visits the SKR though. Thank you all for the support I've had on these AU Facts videos. It's been lovely reading all your comments. I still intend to make more of these as I've had a lot of fun doing it. So, on that note, here's to 10 more episodes. This is EdwardsDayOut, signing off.